Well, hello there. I'm going to show you how to do the fun juniper hat. And yeah, it's a lot of fun to make this hat. And I just love the way the pattern's going. Looking great to me. So I'm going to tell you everything about it. Well, first of all, here's the yarn I'm using, and it's a bulky yarn. And it's by Yarn Bee, Authentic Hand-Dyed Chunky. So that's what it is. And the color is well, I'm not seeing the color. I didn't see it on this side either. Oh, they must have it somewhere. Hand dyed. Corsage. There it is. Prom corsage. Found it. Prom corsage. And it's mostly a kind of a burgundy red, and it has a few other colors in it. You can see here. And of course, it came like this, so you have to wind it up yourself. Okay, so that's the yarn I'm using. And I'm using a Cindywood loom. And this one is a 5/8 inch gauge, and it's my hat size. I think it's got 42 pegs. Most people would be using like a 48 peg in a 5/8 inch. But I have a small head, so this is more kid size, but fits me pretty much like a bulky actually, if I make it long. So there you go. And what else? Okay, well, that's it. I didn't have to mark the loom. It's pretty easy. I've only used 2 stitches in this whole hat. The loom hook I'm using, they don't make them anymore, but they have similar ones on Etsy if you like this kind of a loom hook. So the first thing you're going to do is an owl eye brim. And because I have a video on that, I'm going to take you over to the video. Now the video will tell you can make your brim any size you want, but if you want to have it be this pattern and kind of balance it, you're going to want to do 6 rows of the owl eye. So it'll show you how to cast on and what foundation stitches to make. So you'll have an edge that looks like this, and you'll have it looking like this. It'll be a nice tight good brim. So I'll take you there and just do the 6 owl eye rows, and then we'll come back and we'll start right here at this stitch. So we will see you in a bit. So I'm going to start by doing a chain cast on. It's a crochet chain cast on. I'm going to do it without a crochet hook. So what I do, I just take it, make a loop, just like that, and then put the working yarn through it and have a slip knot, and then I just place that on the first peg. And then I take my loom hook, put it under the loop, and pull the working yarn through to get a loop. And then I tighten it by pulling on the working yarn here in the back and make sure that this stitch is tight. And then I just take that loop, put it behind the next peg, holding on to it, and pull the working yarn through it. And that's all there is to the cast on. Put the loop behind, working yarn through, tighten it up, behind, working yarn through, tighten it up. And at any time, if you want this loop to be smaller, you just pull on it. So working yarn behind and tightening it up. I mean the loop behind and tightening it up. And that's all there is to it. And we just do that all the way around the loop. So I'm just going to put you on pause because it'd be boring watching me do it all the way around the loom. And we will catch up when I'm close to the other side. Okay, so here I am almost at the end. So I take the working or the loop, put it behind the peg, tighten it up, and then here's the one we started at. And so you just take the loop and let it fall over there, and just take the loom hook and knit it over, and now it's all secured and you're ready to go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do now is finish the cast on. So I'm going to do a row of owl eye. And so I just do a U-wrap over peg 1, come over, and then I do a wrap over peg 1 and 2, and just knit it over, and knit it over. Whatever peg you're on, peg 1, you go over peg 1 and 2 and knit it over. I have lots of videos of owl eye on my channel, so you can go watch those if you'd like to see more of a demonstration of it. And then just around and knit it over. On peg 1 over peg 1 and 2, knit it over. And we just do owl eye all the way around. Okay, so I will meet you back up at the beginning peg again. Okay, so I've done my row of owl eye all the way around the loom, and now I'm going to do one row of purl, and it'll be the only purl in the whole hat. And I just want to do it here at the beginning of the brim to make sure that the edge stays nice and straight. So how you purl is you put the working yarn into the loop. There we go. And then pull up the working yarn, take the loop off, and let the loop fall to the front. So take the hook, put it in the loop, pull up the working yarn, and you pull up the whole loop and put the new loop on. Under, pick up the working yarn, put it on the peg, and tighten it up. And there's lots and lots of videos on YouTube if you haven't purled before. So we just do one row of purl. So I will meet you up when we get back to the starter peg again. Okay, so I've done my row of purl, and now I'm just going to do owl eye, and our brim is going to be owl eye stitch. So how we start that, there's our peg 1. We always come over and do a U-wrap on peg 1, and now we can go and do a second wrap over peg 1 and one over peg 2. And wherever we are, we're on peg 1, so we wrap 1 and 2, and we just keep going like that. And you can make your brim however long you like it. You could make just a 1-inch brim if you like thin brims. I'm going to do about 1.5 inches. If you like a really long brim, you can do one that's 2 inches long. So I'm just going to keep working in owl eye till I get the brim the length that I want it, and then we can catch up. Okay, so we'll see you in a few. Okay, so now that you know how to do the brim and you have your brim done, so you're right here, we're going to go right into this stitch. Okay, so we're going to do, here's our pattern, we're going to do 6 rows of this stitch, and now we're only going to do 3 rows of owl eye. Okay, so we needed at least 6 for the brim part. And we did 6 here, but we're going to do 6 always of this stitch, which is the Juniper stitch. We're going to do 3 of owl eye, 6 of Juniper, 3 of owl eye till we get the length that we want for the hat. I'm going to make mine slouchy, so I'm going to go fairly long. For me, I'm going to go around 9 inches. Most people would go around 10 or 10 and a half for a bulky. So if you're making the bulky, you're going to want to go that long, you know, measuring it from here up to here. Or if you decide you don't want to have a bulky and you want to make a beanie hat, you probably want to be more like 8 inches, 8.5 for an adult size. I tend to do mine 7.5 because I take a youth size of hat. Okay, so there you go. So I'm going to show you how to do the Juniper stitch. You know how to do the owl eye stitch because you've seen it in the brim video. So you know how to do this stitch. So we're going to do 6 of these and then back to doing 6 of these. So right now I'm going to show you how to do the Juniper stitch. Okay, so you do it on each peg. So you take the peg, you're going to go in front of it and behind it and in front like this, holding it. You have 1, 2, 3 loops of yarn, and you're going to take the 2 bottom loops and you're going to just knit them over the top, and that's all there is to the stitch. So when you wrap the peg like this, you go behind and around and in front. This is part of the working yarn right here. So you are in control of the tension. This is just the working yarn wrapped like this, and you're taking the bottom stitch that was on from the row before, and you're taking one of the pieces of working yarn, the bottom one, and you're taking them over the top one. That's all there is to Juniper stitch. Okay, around like that and knit off. And you're going to want to keep it, you know, fairly firm, but not so tight you can't knit it off. It should be easy to knit off. If it isn't, then you're too tight. So you just want to make sure there's not a lot of slack, but you are going to see, you know, a lot of work here because that's what you're creating by doing this stitch. When you do this stitch, you're making a big circular loop here. And that's what you get. You get this when you're doing it in the round. It's quite a different stitch doing it in the round than it is from doing it as a flat panel. It looks so awesome both ways. It's got a lot of texture. Okay, so doing the Juniper stitch and knitting it off. Now you want to be sure that when you wrap this, you don't accidentally take the bottom one over the top. If you were to do that, all you're going to get is a U-wrap, a thick U-wrap, but just a U-wrap. So you want to make sure you're taking the 2 bottom ones over the top. Okay, and so then you're going to do 6 rows of this Juniper stitch. And when you're done doing 6 rows of Juniper, you're going to do owl eye. So we will catch up when we get to here, and I'm ready to start the owl eye row, and I'll show you how to do that. When I get there, and I'll also show you how to switch from the owl eye to the Juniper. It's actually quite easy, but I will go over that with you. So we will see you in a bit. Okay, we're back here. So I'm going to show you how you would be, if you were doing your owl eye rows, how you would switch to Juniper. So if you were doing your owl eye rows, you would have knit this one, you would have come over, then you would knit this one off and this one off, and then your yarn would be right here. And then before you go on there, you're always going to wrap this one more time and knit it over, because you want to make sure that every peg has the 2 knits on it. Okay, so if you're doing the owl eye, you're going to come over, knit these over, right? Then your working yarn will be behind this peg. This peg will be number 1, and then you'll just knit this one more if you're about to change to Juniper, and then you'd be doing your Juniper on this peg. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that to you, but I'm doing a Juniper row now, and I had to explain it to you like this because I'm getting long faster than I thought, so I don't think I will be going from owl eye back to Juniper, but I will be doing I will show you how to do owl eye if you're doing juniper too. Okay, so this one, let's say, is a juniper stitch. So you've just done juniper here, and now this is your first peg for owl eye. What you would be doing is you would knit over, and then your working yarn would be here, and then you'd knit over again and over this one, and that's how you'd start your owl eye row, making sure you had the 2 knits on here. Okay, so there's your help changing from one stitch to the other so that you look like this. This is where I'm changing the rows, and you can see that I'm changing the rows because if you look really, really closely, you'll see you'll just see it a little bit, but it's not very noticeable at all. Unless you're looking for it, you wouldn't even see it at all. So that's how seamless it is if you do it the way that I just told you to switch from one way to the other. Okay, so I'm going to do the rest of my rows of juniper to get all 6 of my rows in here, and then I'll have a look and I'll see if I can do any more rows of owl eye, but we will catch up then. So I will see you in a bit. Okay, so here I am, and I've got my next 6 rows of the juniper stitch in here, looking like this. So now it would be 4 rows of owl eye, but I'm not going to because I'm this long, so I'm going quite long. I'm going to get set up to end the hat. But if you were about to go into an owl eye row, there's your last juniper stitch. You would go over like this, do a U-wrap, and then your yarn would be here, and then you would come back and do another U-wrap and wrap over this one, and you would continue doing your owl eye rows. Always 2 stitches on an owl eye peg. Okay, so that's how you do that. Okay, so I am ready to do the process to bind off. Now I have a bind off video of the bind off that I'm going to do here. I want to have one that is not bulky at all, that will work really good with a slouchy hat. It'll also work good with any hat. So you can do this bind off even if you're not doing a slouchy hat. Now if you're not doing a slouchy hat, you can go, when you get the lengths you want, you can go directly and do that bind off and do the 1 row of E-wrap that it says to do in there. But if you're going to do the slouchy hat, it's a good idea to do what I'm going to do here, and that's to do at least 3 rows of E-wrap. You can do 3 to 5 rows depending how much more length you want. If your hat's getting pretty long, you might not want to do more than 3. I do about 3. Then I have 3 loose rows, which will make my hat more slouchy because the loose rows will be looser than this stitch and the owl eye. So it'll be much looser up there and it'll be more of a slouchy hat. Okay, so I'm going to do my 3 rows of E-wrap, and then I'm going to go right into doing the bind off. And E-wrap is just going around the pegs. I only do 3 at a time. A lot of people go all the way around the loom, and it's just knitting them off. That's E-wrap, and I'm just going to do a few rows of that, and then I'm going to bind off. So I'll take you to the bind off video, and then we'll catch up at the end and have a look at the finished hat. So we will see you in a bit. Okay, so we're going to do a reduced brim on the hat. And so the first thing we do, and I've already done this, of course, is done the 1 row of E-wrap. So you can do this not just with this hat, but with any hat that you have that you want to do a reduced brim so that it's not bulky, so it lays flatter, and it works especially nice on slouch hats. So whenever you do that, always do a row of E-wrap just before you start, no matter what stitch you are doing. And the reason for that is E-wrap is nice and loose, so it makes it easier to move stitches over. Okay, so that's the reason for that. So you do the row of E-wrap, and then we're going to start moving stitches to reduce. And it's a very easy reduction to get a flatter brim. We're going to count every 4 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the 4th peg, we're just going to take it off the loom, and then move it over to the peg before. So now you have 2 stitches on the loom, and number 4 is blank. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 again. You take the loom off, or the stitch off, and put it on the peg before. So now if we go from the beginning, we got 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg, 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg. And you're going to do that all the way around the loom. Every fourth, you're going to be moving over to the third. When you get to the end, if it's not equally divisible, you'll have some extra loops with thread on, yarn on, that you can't move over, and that's okay. Leave them on. It's better to leave them on than to reduce too much. So I'll meet you back when we get all the way and that we reduced by moving every fourth peg onto the third. So we'll see you in a few. Okay, so I've gone all the way around now, and I've moved them all over, and mine did turn out fairly even. I have just 3 here instead of 2. So that's all because it's not evenly divisible. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do another round of E-wrap. And how you do that is you E-wrap all the pegs that have yarn on them, knit them over, and with this one we take both loops over, then go behind any empty pegs and E-wrap the pegs that have yarn on them, taking the 2 off, skipping by going behind the empty peg, and then just E-wrapping. Okay, so you just do that all the way around the loom, and I will see you back at the beginning. Okay, so I've E-wrapped around the loom, and now we're going to do our next reduction. So we have the 3 pieces of yarn that are on the 3 pegs, and then on either side pegs with no yarn. So we're always going to be working with the ones that have yarn on them, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and you're going to take the yarn from number 2 now and move it over to number 1. And then on the next 3 peg grouping, you're going to do the same thing. Now on the first one I had 4 yarns, so here I'm going to just ignore the extra yarn here, and on 2 I'm just going to move it over to 1, like that. Okay, so you just go all the way around, taking the yarn from number 2 and putting it on number 1. It's a little awkward for me. And I'll meet you up when we have that all done. Okay, now that you've done that, you have yarn on every second peg. So now we just E-wrap around, doing the same thing, going behind the pegs with no yarn and E-wrapping the pegs with yarn. Taking both loops over, going behind the ones with no yarn, and just E-wrapping. So I'll see you when you have that done. Okay, so you finished, and then all we're going to do now is take this yarn and put it around the loom, and then another half. We just want to make sure we have it long enough, and cut it, because we're all reduced, and now we're just going to take it off the loom. Whoops. That off there. So you just take a needle. You can use your loom hook also if you want. You don't have to have a needle. And I'm just going to thread the needle with the yarn. There, got it this time. There we go. And then all you're going to do is go around the loom and just scoop up that yarn and get it inside this. So we go up and we just scoop up that loop. Okay, so I will just meet you up when we've scooped up all the loops. Okay, and then just be sure you've picked up every single loop, and then go back into the first loop that you started with. Then you can just take your needle off. At this point, I'm just going to cut this a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with, and then take my loom hook, and I'm just going to start popping all these off the loom. You can even do it with your fingers. There, and it's off the loom. And then at this point, all we're going to be doing is drawing in the hat. So just draw it in a little ways, and then you're going to take the yarn and put it to the inside of the hat, although the inside of this hat looks really good too, just as good as the outside. Okay, and then you're just going to pull it closed until you get it all the way closed. Nice and tight. Now what I do is I hold it tight, and I usually go in and check and make sure that I've drawn it up evenly, and you can see that. So just a nice flattened brim. But now we can put the needle back on, cut this shorter again. Just save enough to sew it up and weave it in. And thread your needle. Okay, now I want to make sure that this is nice and tight so that we don't end up with a hole anywhere. And then I'm just going to put this through a couple of the yarns and make a knot. And I got that tail stuck in there. There we go. Just make a nice tight knot to hold it closed. And then you can see where the center was right there. And then I'm just going to sew around it. Now, if you were sure this was always going to be the inside of the hat, you could even just sew it across. But I'm going to sew around to keep it neat, for the reason that I might be using this side too. This hat is very nicely reversible, but it gives you that option. And I'm just going to sew around. And every once in a while, I'm just going to put a little knot on it. There, get that working yarn out of there and sewing around here. And then I'm just going to do another knot. I just wouldn't want it to ever come undone. And when you're sure you have the hat all very securely sewn, you just do another little knot and you are done. There we go. And then you can weave in the end of the yarn. I'm not going to bother doing that now, just to keep it there. Turn the hat to the other side, and there you go. You have a nice flat brim. See? Just flattens it out. It has a really nice little shape to it. If you laid it down like this, you can just see how nice and flat it is. Just an easy way to reduce your brim. And it's really great on slouchy hats. Okay, so here I am with the slouchy hat all done, and it is slouchy. If you just did a beanie, I mean, yours will look like this, just not quite as long or wide, yeah. And there's the nice flattened brim, so you can see it's nice and flat. And here's what it looks like. Your inside looks like this, and your outside looks like this. It's just very, very beautiful. It has such a nice texture and nice design to it. I really love this one. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, bye.